They never understand you, and you can feel it in the way the world stares at your silence. They think your quiet means weakness, confusion, hesitation. They think your mind is empty when it is actually overflowing. They do not know that your silence is not the absence of thought. It is the weight of 1,000 storms collapsing inside your skull. It is the relentless flood of ideas, memories, fears, possibilities, and unfinished conversations firing at the same time. This is why ADHD people think so much but speak so little. Your mind is a battlefield of sound, and speaking feels like trying to translate a tornado into a single clean sentence. From the moment you wake, your mind is already running. Thoughts leap across timelines, possibilities crash into old memories, and feelings rise like waves that refuse to calm. You are not slow, you are not shy, you are not broken. You are someone whose internal engine never shuts down. You stand in a world built for slower minds, trying to translate lightning into simple human sentences. Every time you want to speak, you are sorting chaos. You are filtering noise. You are fighting the urge to say everything at once. You have spent years watching people misunderstand your pauses. They assume you are disconnected when you are hyperconnected. They assume you do not care when you care so deeply that speaking feels dangerous, because every word carries emotional weight. You learned early that your intensity scares people. Your honesty overwhelms them. Your insights confuse them. So you hide your thoughts like treasure buried under layers of self-protection. Silence becomes your armor. Silence becomes your control. Silence becomes the one place where your mind does not have to fight for space. But the truth is harsher. You remain silent because you are tired of being misunderstood. You are tired of explaining your mind to people who only understand linear thinking. You are tired of being told to calm down, slow down, do less, be smaller. You are tired of feeling like your voice is too much for the room. You speak less, not because you know less, but because you feel more. You feel the tension in every conversation. You feel the energy in every room. You feel the pressure of every expectation. You feel the weight of being different in a world that worships sameness. But here is the shift. There is power in your silence. It sharpens you. It strengthens you. It allows you to observe what others miss. While they rush to fill the air with noise, you listen. You notice details. You catch patterns. You read intentions. You see the truth beneath the surface. Your mind is not quiet, and that is exactly why your silence becomes a weapon. It trains you to think strategically, instead of react impulsively. It turns your inner storms into maps. It turns your doubts into direction. You are not lazy. You are not fragile. You are built different. Your silence is not weakness. It is preparation. It is the slow forging of a sharper version of yourself. You think so much because your brain was designed to detect every angle. You speak so little because you are refining the exact moment when your voice will matter. You are preparing the words that cannot be ignored. And there will come a moment when your voice slices through the noise like a blade. A moment when your thoughts align. A moment when the storm inside you finds direction. A moment when silence ends, because it is finally time to rise. That moment is not accidental. It is the result of every quiet battle you fought inside your head. It is the result of every thought you carried alone. It is the result of every time you stayed silent instead of breaking yourself to fit into the expectations of others. This is your transformation. The shift from overwhelmed to focused. The shift from chaotic energy to disciplined force. The shift from quiet confusion to silent power. You will learn to speak when it matters. You will learn to use your thoughts as precision rather than noise. You will learn that your silence is not the graveyard of your voice. It is the birthplace of your dominance. And when you finally step forward, the world will not forget the sound of someone who spent years preparing in the shadows. Because the truth is simple. ADHD minds are storms, and storms do not speak until they are ready to reshape the sky. You carry a mind that refuses to settle for shallow truths. You think deeply because your intuition demands depth, not surface impressions. You speak carefully because you know words can wound, shift destinies, or expose parts of you that others may not value. You think endlessly because your brain refuses to accept the simple path when 1,000 hidden paths exist beneath it. This is not a flaw. This is a rare intelligence shaped by a lifetime of navigating noise others cannot hear. Every silence you choose is a choice made from strength, not fear. Every quiet moment is a moment of recalibration. Every unspoken thought is a deliberate strategy. And as your journey continues, you will discover that the mind you once doubted is the same force that will elevate you, rebuild you, and guide you toward transformation. You have spent most of your life trapped between two extremes. On one side, a mind that roars without warning. On the other, a voice that freezes when the world demands expression. People think silence means emptiness, but they have no idea how loud your inner world becomes. They do not hear the rapid calculations, the emotional turbulence, the memories surfacing without permission, the future scenarios unfolding in vivid detail. They do not feel the weight of overthinking that fills every decision, every sentence, every breath. They think you hesitate because you lack confidence. The truth is far different. You hesitate because your mind is too fast, not too slow. This is the paradox of ADHD. The mind races like a storm engine, but the mouth feels like a locked door. You stand on the edge of expression, but the words clash, collide, and tangle before reaching the surface. You know exactly what you feel, but the translation process collapses under the velocity of your thoughts. You fear sounding scattered, so you choose silence. You fear being misunderstood, so you choose distance. You fear disappointing others, so you choose observation. This is how the overthinking begins, not from weakness, but from hyper-awareness. You sense everything. You detect shifts in tone, tension, body language, energy. You see hidden meanings that others miss. And because you feel so deeply, you double-check every response before releasing it. This internal checking becomes a prison. You replay past conversations. You replay mistakes. You replay moments when you spoke impulsively and regretted it later. You replay memories where someone mocked your intensity or dismissed your thoughts. Slowly, you learn to speak less, not because you know less, but because you carry more emotion, more understanding, more fear of repeating a wound that never fully healed. This is how silence becomes your safe space. But safety is not the same as growth. And somewhere inside you, a voice begins to rise. A voice that refuses to stay buried. A voice forged by years of quiet endurance. A voice that knows your silence is not the end of you. It is the beginning of a new form of control. Your silence becomes discipline. You begin to notice the difference between chaos thinking and strategic thinking. You learn to channel your mental storms into direction instead of confusion. You start to recognize patterns that guide your decisions. You see which thoughts deserve attention and which thoughts are only noise. This is the point where the world underestimates you the most. They think you are drifting. They think you are disconnected. They think you are passive. But underneath the surface, something is sharpening. Something is aligning. Something is preparing. This preparation is not visible. It happens in the quiet moments between your thoughts. It happens when you lie awake thinking about your life, your goals, your failures, your unspoken potential. It happens when you finally realize that your silence has given you an advantage. While others reveal themselves too quickly, you learn to observe. While others rush into decisions, you learn to analyze. While others crumble under pressure, you learn to internalize the storm until it transforms into clarity. This clarity becomes your new foundation. With clarity comes identity. You begin to understand yourself in ways you never could before. You realize that your racing thoughts are not signs of instability. They are signs of a brain designed to explore every possibility. You realize your emotional intensity is not a weakness. It is the source of your deepest empathy and intuition. You realize your silence is not a failure. It is restraint. It is the ability to choose when to speak and when to hold back. This is where your power begins to return. Slowly at first, then all at once, you start to see the truth. You were never meant to think like everyone else. You were never meant to speak like everyone else. You were built for depth, not surface. You were designed for complexity, not simplicity. Your mind is not chaotic. It is layered. It is rich. It is multidimensional. The world calls it a disorder because they do not understand it. They do not recognize the brilliance hiding inside your silence. They do not see how much strength it takes to navigate a mind that refuses to slow down. They do not understand how much power is stored in the thoughts you never speak. This is where the transformation begins. The phase where silence becomes strength instead of shame. You discover 3 strategies that shift everything. The first strategy is internal dominance. This is the moment when you stop being afraid of your thoughts. You stop letting them drown you. You learn to direct them like soldiers, instead of letting them run wild like shadows. You become the commander of your mind rather than a prisoner of it. You choose which thoughts deserve life, and which thoughts deserve dismissal. This discipline sharpens you in ways the world never sees. The second strategy is selective expression. Instead of forcing yourself to speak constantly, you speak with purpose. You choose moments when your voice creates impact. You become surgical with your words, sharp, precise, controlled. People begin to notice that when you speak, they feel it, they listen, they remember. Your silence makes your voice powerful, rather than invisible. The third strategy is identity ascension. This is the phase where you stop apologizing for your mind. You stop comparing yourself to people built for smaller lives. You stop shrinking your intelligence to make others comfortable. You rise into the identity that was always waiting for you. You become someone who knows that thinking deeply is not a curse. It is a throne. The storm inside you does not calm. It evolves, and you evolve with it, stepping out of your silence, not as someone who lost control, but as someone who finally mastered it. There comes a point in every ADHD life where the silence becomes unbearable, not because you cannot speak, but because you finally realize that staying quiet is costing you more than it protects you from. You begin to feel the weight of the thoughts you never expressed. You feel the heaviness of ideas that never became action. You feel the pressure of dreams trapped behind fear, hesitation, and the belief that you are too chaotic to be understood. This moment changes everything. It is the psychological breaking point, where the storm inside you refuses to remain contained. It pushes against the walls you built. It demands release. It demands transformation. This breaking point does not destroy you. It reveals you. It forces you to see what is possible. When you no longer apologize for the way your mind works, you start realizing that overthinking is not your enemy. It is your compass. It guides you toward truth. It exposes lies. It protects you from people who do not deserve access to your inner world. You begin to see that your silence has kept you safe, but it has also kept you small. and something inside you refuses to stay small. Something inside you wants to rise. This rise does not happen all at once. It arrives in layers. The first layer is honesty. You begin to admit the truth you avoided for years. You think too much because your mind was built with pathways others do not possess. You speak less because you are constantly translating between mind and mouth, feeling and language, intuition and expression. You are not silent because you were weak. You were silent because the world conditioned you to believe your thoughts were too intense, too fast, too complicated. But now you see the truth. Your thoughts are not too much. They are too advanced for shallow understanding. The second layer is acceptance. You stop wishing your mind behaved like everyone else's. You stop forcing yourself to mimic their pace. You stop punishing yourself for needing time to articulate your truth. Acceptance unlocks freedom. You finally breathe without guilt. You finally exist without shame. You finally recognize that your mind is not a liability. It is an empire waiting to be ruled. You start trusting your patterns, your intuition, your internal signals. This trust becomes the anchor that holds you steady, even when your thoughts move like storms. The third layer is activation. This is the point where you realize that silence has shaped you, but it does not have to define you. You begin to speak with intention. You begin to act with purpose. You begin to share the thoughts you once hid. You take the ideas that lived in your mind for years and bring them into the world. And when you do, something incredible happens. People listen. People feel it. People notice the depth behind your words. They see the weight of everything you carried silently. They sense the power forged in years of internal battles. They realize that your quiet was not emptiness. It was preparation. Preparation for a life where your mind becomes your greatest asset, rather than your greatest fear. Preparation for a life where your words create impact rather than anxiety. Preparation for a life where your silence becomes a tool instead of a cage. You rise because you stop fighting your mind and start using it. You rise because you stop shrinking your intelligence and start owning it. You rise because you stop treating your overthinking as a curse and start treating it as a weapon. This rise leads to something even greater. Ascension. The moment you transcend a version of yourself shaped by guilt, shame, and misunderstanding, you step into a version of yourself forged by resilience, pattern recognition, and emotional depth. You become someone who understands the power of thinking deeply before acting. You become someone who uses silence wisely instead of fearfully. You become someone who carries wisdom that others mistake for mystery. And in this ascended state, you finally understand the truth that eluded you for so long. You were never meant to blend in. You were meant to see what others cannot. You were meant to feel what others avoid. You were meant to think on levels that others never reach. You were meant to build a world out of intuition, empathy, intensity, and imagination. You were meant to turn your silence into strength and your thoughts into fuel. You were meant to rise. And when you rise, the world changes around you. People begin to take you seriously. They notice the clarity in your eyes. They sense the shift in your presence. They feel the precision in your words. They see the discipline behind your decisions. You no longer look like someone lost in thoughts. You look like someone choosing thoughts, directing them, leading them, shaping them into strategies and actions. You become someone whose silence is respected instead of misunderstood. Someone whose mind is admired instead of dismissed. This is your mythic transformation. The moment where you step out of the shadows and into the identity that fits you. The identity you were always building, even when you thought you were falling apart. The identity that holds discipline, intensity, empathy, and lightning focused into a single unstoppable force. You rise not because the world finally understands you, but because you finally understand yourself. Everything you thought was broken was actually potential waiting for direction. Everything you thought was weakness was strength in raw form. Everything you thought was confusion was energy in the process of becoming power. You are not broken. You are not lazy. You were built different. Your silence was never the end of your voice. It was the sharpening of it. Your overthinking was never the enemy. It was the training ground for your strategic mind. Your racing thoughts were never chaos. They were signals of a brain built for complexity. Now you rise with intention. You rise with clarity. You rise with the storm behind you and the throne ahead of you. You become someone who thinks deeply, speaks powerfully, and moves decisively. Someone forged by silence. Someone awakened by thought. Someone destined to ascend. Speak when you must. Think as you do. Rise as you were meant to. Subscribe for more storm-forged truth.